Hi, my name is Cheryl Ryefield, and I work for the Department of the Army at the Pentagon. On September 11th, 2001, I was on the road, Route 27, which is Washington Boulevard. I was driving to work, and I was stuck in traffic at the time the plane hit the building. Um, Today's date is October 17th, 2002. I wanted to tell you a little bit about my experience that morning. I was driving, like I said, to work. The traffic was really light, and my duty hours were started at 9:30 in the morning. So I was right on time. It was a beautiful, beautiful, bright, clear, crisp morning. And the closer I got to the Pentagon, of course, I was listening to the news reports, and they were reporting that two towers had been hit in New York City, and the traffic became snarled when I started hearing that. I was very close to the Pentagon at that point, and I was listening to the radio, and George Bush came on. He was visiting some school children in Florida, and he came onto the radio, broke through all of the announcers saying, "What's this? What's this? What's going on?" And he pronounced it a terrorist attack, and that was a very chilling pronouncement. At that point, I was stuck under the 395 overpass just as it approaches the Pentagon. Again, I was on Washington Boulevard, and so I was under the last overpass, and traffic was going like 2 miles an hour because I'm sure everybody was listening to the radio report, and they probably had a little fender bender, and that made all the traffic creep, if not come to like a complete stop. And while I was waiting for the traffic to go forward, I heard a noise and looked, and there was movement on the hill just to my left, which was the Navy Annex. That's the building, and it's this big hill where Route 95 comes over the overpass. And so I looked, and there's this plane, and it's thundering down, following the contours of the land, getting closer and closer. And I knew immediately what it was. I looked to the car on my left. I drive a van. And that driver just looked at me, and then we looked forward again, and I was screaming, "No, no." I was beating my hands on the steering wheel, and the airplane clipped the lights, the light poles in front of me. It was maybe 50 yards in front of me. It was going a little bit diagonal as it approached the Pentagon. After it clipped the light poles, the wings tilted up a little bit, and I had to squint my eyes because it was so brilliant out, and the light was reflecting off of the silver of the plane's body. And then I opened my eyes, the wings straightened out a little bit. I saw a movement in the pilot's window. Some figure turned like this. And then the plane sped up and exploded into the Pentagon. It was unbelievable. And then explosions rolled up, and it was really loud. And everybody was around me was staring with their jaws open. I threw open my car door. The radio was on. Nothing, of course, nobody knew about the Pentagon. Leapt out of my car. It was still running. I didn't even realize it. Ran forward. There's some grass up a little forward, maybe 5 cars in front of me. Ran to the edge of the grass and saw people start running out of the building and running around. I knew that they were all trained for disasters, so I didn't go any further. Stuff was raining out of the sky. My skin was covered with like a fine dust and particles. There were things that had fallen, not close to me, but you could see things that had fallen. And I got back in my car and was waiting. I couldn't get any signal on my cell phone. I was waiting for the radio to report it. It finally reported it. And all of these, I could hear emergency vehicles, so I thought, okay, I'm going to move my car out of the way. The sirens, there were helicopters coming in. I moved my car out of the way and listened to the radio and tried to dial my husband on the cell phone. I still couldn't get any signals. Oh, I forgot to mention that before I was totally stopped where I was, I had called my boss and I said, "Hey, Robert, I'm running a little late. I think everybody's tied up because of the World Trade Center, and I'll be in as soon as I can get through this traffic jam." And then I went a little further. That was like 3 minutes before I got stopped and the plane hit the building. After I pulled my car over, I got out of the car and climbed the berm up to the overpass. At that point, traffic was either stopped, everybody was gawking, or was going forward slowly because there was a big traffic jam. I sat up there and just watched in amazement as people crawled out. I could see where the plane had hit. I knew that we had an office that wasn't too far from that site, and I was worried about my coworkers. I continued to try to get a signal. About 45 minutes later, some authorities started signaling people to get in their cars and get out of the way so that more emergency vehicles could come in. And so I got in my car and was inching along, looking for people, to pick up, because I have a big van. I could take people with me. I didn't know what to do or where to go, and I figured I should go home. I'll just go home. So I'm creeping along, and I spot people from my office walking on the side, and I'm beeping my horn, and I saw my boss. He was on the side of the road. He'd come out of the back of the building and came around, and anyway, by the time he saw me and I was slowing down, pulling over, trying to buy some time so he could ride with me, the authorities said, no, stopping, get going. So I went on. And I went, crept along my normal route to go home. Traffic was just really log jammed. I made my way further from the Pentagon, and there was a gas station, and I needed gas, and I thought, okay, this is an emergency. So I went to the gas station and got gas, just in shock, shaking, Nobody's talking to anybody. Then I went to the ATM machine and pulled out some cash, and I said, oh, what the hell? And I went to the grocery store and picked up some, milk, eggs, bread, whatever. I don't even have kids, but I did that. It took me about 2 hours to get home. I live about 10 miles from the Pentagon. And when I got home, my neighbor was out on the sidewalk, and she gave me a big hug and said a prayer. While I was driving home, I was able to call. I had the wrong number plugged in for my husband on my cell phone. So I called whoever was in that office and pretty hysterically explained that who I was, and would they please call my husband and ask him to call my cell phone, which he managed to do. I had gotten a call just a few minutes before I got through from my brother, who was checking to make sure I was okay. He was pretty shook up. And my parents were visiting my sister in Massachusetts. And I was able to call them and ask them to call my in-laws and tell them I was okay. I don't know. I don't think they got through anytime soon. But anyway, so my husband got home about 3 hours after I did. He works for the Defense Department along the Maryland River. So that's what happened. As a result, the day had a really big impact on me because, number one, I knew a couple people who were killed. I'd worked closely with one guy in particular. And number two, my office was just on the outer edge of where the damage from the smoke and heat and water occurred. And I was a graphic artist, and I had a lot of electronic equipment, and videotapes were also part of my trade. And so my office was destroyed. I couldn't do my job anymore. We were shut down. We weren't allowed back in the office for about 3 weeks at that time we were allowed to go in and get our personal effects. I was just really grateful I could get my historical paperwork, and I had a few mementos that had meaning to me, so I was able to rescue them. The room was, oh, there was mold growing everywhere. It was horrible. But what it meant was that the resources for my job were destroyed. I worked with another man, and both of us, job gone. I ended up, well, we also had a TV studio that was destroyed. That was the room that was closest to the impact. And two of our guys were in there. They were blown back through the walls. Thank God they survived. They both were had military training, although they were civilians, and they crawled out. The impact on the people I work with has been telling. Of course, I work with a general and lots of Army officers and a few enlisted people. And it's interesting to see that the impact it's touched them very deeply. They've struggled along with the civilians who aren't trained. A year later, we've been placed in the building. I still, as a result of the terror attack, I went to training for 3 months last October through December. And then my office was temporarily moved to a building about a mile away down near Reagan Airport. Half of the office. And the other half stayed in temporary quarters in the Pentagon while they figured out where they would put us. We were given like loaner computers and given like busy work and tried to rebuild. And that's still not there. The half of the building office that remained in the building moved into their new quarters the week before September 11th, 2002. And it's interesting. My office, the Chief of Public Affairs, was moved into the first floor of the Pentagon, right where the nose of the plane hit the building. So Operation Phoenix, which was the restoration efforts, that's where we moved into, right in that space. And the halls are very hallowed. People are somber. It's not very giddy. It's very, very clinical in there. Right next to our offices, they built the Memorial Chapel and the Memorial Room, and that's a very beautiful, peaceful space. The best thing for me was the memorial event on September 11th, 2002. I really felt a strong need to go. Because I work in public affairs, there'd been a big hype, big push, working with the media, working with the families and the casualties and the victims, to connect them in preparation for, the stories that they were going to tell on September 11th, the anniversary. And so that was kind of disconcerting, plus because it kept everything in my face. And that, along with the fact that Reagan changed their flight pattern and they're flying directly over the Pentagon, I was really jumpy. But on September 11th, 2002, I walked from my office to the Pentagon to the event, the stadium that they built around the crash site. And I attended the memorial ceremony with 13,000 other people who felt they really, really wanted to be there. It was just so healing to share that moment with those people who wanted to be there too. I just can't express what a release I've gotten since that day. I'm able to look forward, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, so what would I say to the people watching this in the future? I want you to know how very, very precious your liberty and democracy are, and how fragile it is. It can just be taken away. It's not something to make jest of. It's something to truly appreciate. And this just brought it home. I'm so sad that people are so full of hate in this world that they feel they have to terrorize other people. I want to say that you need to go on and you need to work for democracy, whatever way you feel is the best way. But I think it's a really wonderful quality of life that I'm so grateful to have been a part of and a citizen of. So, anyway, that's what I have to say. And I do have one thing I want to show you. This is a drawing of the plane, and this is just an interesting story because when I got, as a photographer, I reached for my camera when I saw the plane, and I usually keep a little point and shoot camera in the console next to me. But it wasn't there because I'd taken it out of the car because it was summertime and it's really bad for the film. So anyway, when I got home, what I did was I made a drawing of the plane. The interesting thing about this, I'll hold it up and show you. The interesting thing about this drawing is that, as you can see, it has windows like a passenger plane, but it has stars on it. They're the markings of American Air Force planes. I don't know. I don't know what it means, what I saw, but I wanted to show you because I think it has some meaning. I think maybe I might have seen two planes, but nobody knows. Nobody knows about that. So anyway, thanks, and I hope this is useful to future generations.